Good evening, it's 6th of December, everything's really bullish. Bitcoin is back, testing 100,000. I still think that we are in a sideways correction, but the way this market is behaving, I would not be surprised with a blast higher. Certainly the inflows into ETH are what's driving it, and ETH is pushing above the 4,000 round number and back to testing the March highs, which are a little bit higher at 4,087. If these inflows to ETH, and this is what's driving this, we need to watch what happens here, because ETH against Bitcoin is a really strong kind of altcoin indicator, or it always used to be. So looking pretty good after yesterday's pretty wild shakeout, if you like. So the altcoins we're going to look at today are the older ones, the bigger cap: ADA, Litecoin, Ethereum Classic, Lynx, Avalanche, Polkadot, Uniswap, Sand, FDM, SUI, and BNB, and we'll do it in that order. So let's start with ADA. Now, this guy didn't get appointed, did he, to Trump's administration? However, this chart is still wildly bullish, just like everything else in crypto. When we measure from the lows that we made in 2023, one of the first signs that you've made a bottom or you've stopped going down is you see a very nice 5-wave move, and that's exactly what we got from this low in June 2023, followed by a 3-wave pullback. That's a classic move. So from here, we would expect this third wave to be the strongest and most trendy, and that's really what we've seen. It's just exploded. Where we have reached in ADA is 1.618 of this first swing. So that's very common for a third wave. If we push through this level, it's at 1.23. The next most common would be 2.618. So we consolidate sideways, when I count from this low, it kind of looks like we've gone 1, 2, 3, and we haven't made a wave 4. So we could very easily do a shallow pullback here, and getting above and holding above 1.23. Maybe we do this for a few weeks. In the beginning of January, we blast out of here. Maybe we go before then. So this is one of those levels. So there's a lot of support and resistance if we look left at this 1.23 level. These highs, lows, highs, this is a big deal support and resistance level. So I would be more inclined to sideways consolidation, and then we continue to blast higher in ADA. One thing in crypto, the fifth wave, the last final wave, is often the strongest, longest. Not always, but very, very often. And so I would not be surprised if this happens here. So we are potentially at resistance here at 1.23. So now I'm looking on lower time frames to see if we are making any kind of a reversal pattern, and I have to say, so far it looks just like a 3-wave correction, like pretty much all of the other 3-wave corrections that we made on the way up here. Sometimes though, when you get to big levels, these 3-wave corrections turn into bigger ones. So you'll have 3 waves back, and then your rally will be 3 waves or sideways, and then you'll do another one. So we could, if this rally that we began here on the 5th of December, if this just ends up being a 3-wave and we don't make new highs or can't sustain new highs, or if we get above this level at 1.23, we can't hold above it, then potentially this is just the first swing in a 3-wave correction, and we'll do a bigger one. And that normally means back to previous swing lows, which likely, if we look here in ADA, is going to be that round number 1.0 before we continue higher. So it kind of is all going to depend on what the broader market is doing. If we stay bullish and Bitcoin really does break above 100 and hold above it, 102 is my level really, and then we've got 105 and so on higher from there. So yeah, let's see. I do think this market is frothy. I do think it's still a really important time to be careful. That it is more likely than not that we go sideways and it gets a little bit choppy. But for me, that's going to be the major level in ADA. And 1.82 will be the next upside target if we keep going here. We won't go in a straight line, obviously. Just like this previous swing, it'll be 5 waves, and that's what we'd be looking for again. So looking good at the moment, no need to get out. In fact, you know, when we look at this 4 hour, we're still riding these 4 hour moving averages higher. Now, when that changes, as long as we don't break these lows, I would just expect some sideways. If we get underneath, obviously it'll turn into something more. Or if you look at it on the hourly, that, you know, these hourly 200 moving average is the king of this chart. That's how we're riding. You know, it's staying bullish at the moment in ADA. Let's take a look at Litecoin, another one. Now, I think it's a little bit of genius, Litecoin deciding to become a meme coin, but here we're in Litecoin. Let's go first off to the monthly chart. Now, this is another one where from the low that we made in June 2022, it kind of looks like, was it 5 waves up? I'm not sure. Very clearly, though, even if we're not sure about this swing, very clearly from the high in July 2023, this was 3 waves, an ABC correction back. So if we measure from this low to high and project from here, the first thing we would expect is, you know, 61.8 or an equal measure move, and then we'll ride through these fib levels. So here we're at 144 is a big level, and then 170. If we can extend beyond 144, 170 is where we're looking. So now we go down to the weekly and see how we're doing. We've just tagged this level. We've just broken out above this equal measured move level. What would not be so bullish would be is if we get a long tail and we drop back and we close underneath the 124. That would mean we've done an equal measured move with quite a long tail. That would point to a bigger pullback towards this weekly 200 moving average, which has been such strong support, resistance, and so on. So as long as we hold and don't fall back and don't close the week back or the month back underneath 124.5, we keep going higher, and our next upside target is 170. It closed underneath 1.24.5 likely means a pullback to retest 105 or 100 and this weekly 200 moving average in Litecoin. So hold on for the ride. If again, go to lower time frames, look at how our patterns are unfolding. We're seeing very nice 3-wave corrections all the way up, and so far that looks like exactly what we're doing. We're riding this 4-hour moving average, we're riding the hourly. It looks like we've double bottomed, so we're setting up a kind of a sideways range, and we'll see what happens when we retest the heights. Remember, 145 is the level we need to close and hold above if we're going to continue higher. We have, if we look at the daily, you know, since we got up here, done a little bit, 4 or 5 days of sideways dojis, indecision. This is not a bearish reversal yet, just to bear that in mind. This is just sideways consolidation after we went a little bit too far too fast. Let's take a look at the Ethereum Classic. This is another one. Gosh, it doesn't stop. Now, ETH has been really strong, and Ethereum Classic is doing the same. So here on the weekly, if we go back to the lows and we go back to 2022, this kind of looks like 5 waves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, doesn't it? And 3 waves back. Either way, we've done kind of this consolidation. So this is our first swing, and here's our 3-wave correction. I don't know if I'm measuring this right, but we'll measure this first swing higher. And so, you know, from this, I have to say, this kind of looks a little bit double bottomy. And this kind of looks like, so when we have a consolidation like this, you know, normally when you can draw a triangle, we can't draw this as the trend line because we didn't get this third touch to confirm it. We've kind of kept going. So we're going to look at measured swings, really, for Ethereum Classic. So a retest of these highs, and then these highs are going to be our first target. And the second lot of highs here are the first main target for me, because if I measure fib retraces from the highs that we made in 2021 That's the 236 fib, and there's a whole bunch of support and resistance at this level. So I think if we can break and continue past these highs here at 39, which we need Ethereum to do as well, really, because this is like the little sister that follows on, then we test next 45.9, and our target is 51.97. So more to go. Very often, first time back, especially after all these years, to a big 236 fib level, we'll get a little bounce off this level. It would be unusual to blast all the way through, but if we do, support becomes resistance and vice versa. That's what we're looking for, not just a little false break above. So looking pretty good in Ethereum Classic. Now, if we say this is our first swing higher, this was a 3-wave correction, then we could say very simply in Ethereum Classic that 236 fib would kind of line up with an equal measured move. We can measure it very simply from this low like this. So got a bit further to go, 51.97, the next upside target for Ethereum Classic. I don't expect this to stop anytime soon. I don't think this far away from these moving averages it's a very good entry unless you get a really kind of good 4-hour pullback or a 4-hour long entry like we had here, which means a big rally to new highs, 3 waves back, and we look for that to continue. They don't always point down like that. Sometimes, you know, we need to, people talk about top blasting, but if you've got at a top, you know, a very nice kind of 3 waves sideways price action, like for example we got here 1, 2, 3, it's, you know, it's not, it's a much easier trade to buy the breakout of. So looking good for Ethereum Classic as long as ETH keeps going, and I think ETH is really doing the catch-up trade at the moment, so looking pretty good. Let's take a look at Link. Link has reached a really big level. First off, I really like this chart. When I look from the lows we made in 2017, we can count 5 waves up, we can count 3 waves back. We came down to an 886 fib level. So this is from the all-time lows to highs. We pull back to an 886 fib. When you reverse an 886 fib and you get above the 786, your first target is the 50% in the middle. And that's just what we've just literally tagged. It's at 26.48 in Link. And if you can then, it's also looking like 3 waves or equal measured moves to get there, which is kind of looking like here. So we have got now a equal measure move 3 waves back to a 50% level. So in Chainlink, which I'm a big fan of, I'd like to see what happens on this retest, because if we double top or we can't break out here, I think this is a good place to take some profit in this one. You know, when we looked at this retrace and this really long bottom that we built in 2022, 2023, we said if we got above this 786 fib level, this would be our target. And here we are at it in an equal measure move. I'm not sure that this is going to be the end of it, but it is one of those levels where we could see a little bit of a bigger pullback. If when we retest these highs on the lower and on the lower time frames, we look like we're setting up to do that, you know, potentially we've already done a double top here. If we blast through and we get above this level, happy days. We are going to keep going, and the next upside target, if we can hold above 26, is 37, which is where this swing would be 1.618 of the first swing that we made from the lows. So 1, 2, 3, 37.12 is the next upside target for Link, Chainlink. Let's take a look at AVAX. And see where we are with that one, and got all my charts are hold on, here we go. Here we go, AVAX. Now this one very similar, but I kind of Not sure about this one. In the kind of looks a bit 5 waves to me. So here we've had our first thing to the 38.2 fib and a very clear 3-wave pullback. So whether this is just a 3-wave measured correction, whether this is a new really bullish upswing, how it unfolds will let us know. And if we measure from this low to this high and project it from here, you can see we're at our 61.8 level, and if we continue higher we will have an equal measured move back to a 50% level if we continue higher. So 52.38 is important resistance that we need to close and hold above if we're going to continue to 77. And if we look down to the daily, here we are sideways at this measured move level, and this is our upside target zone if we get above it. So 52.38, does it look very bullish? It does, because normally if you get to a level, like especially if you spiked into that level, you would expect a really nasty pullback. This is just bullish sideways consolidation, and just, you know, just like Solana and so many of the other charts where this is a 3-wave back, this is not a sign of a top or reversal pattern yet. I think we could argue that maybe if we were to break these lows here, or if we were to just roll over here, we could argue maybe this was a little bit of a topping head and shoulders pattern or something, and that tends to be the pattern you tend to make if you kind of overshoot. So we overshot this level, but unless that plays out or we break down here, then I expect this to keep going high. Again, a break of these lows, and particularly this low here, that would say that a bigger pullback is in play at this level. Don't know how it's going to work, but for now it's staying bullish, and it still looks bullish, holding above 52.77 next for Avalanche. Let's take a look at DOT now. So if we talk about measured moves, one of the trickiest things is, especially when you double bottom, is retesting the highs in the middle, because that's what you've got to break above if you're going to keep going, and we're pretty close to these in DOT. And this does look like a double bottom, doesn't it? The low here, 3.62, the low here was, hold on, let's make sure I got it right, 3.62, 3.59, I think that's close enough. We'll call this a double bottom, which means that a retest of these highs is likely to be a little bit of a trouble area. The good news is that the weekly 200 moving average, although it's flat, is a little bit higher. It's flat because we've been in this sideways range for a couple of years in this one, but we can say very happily that if we get above this and this, so within this zone there's a lot of resistance, then the next stop will be this 236 fib level at 15.72. So from the highs in 2021 to the lows that we made in 2023, that's going to be our first target, and some pretty tough resistance, and then we'll ride level to level to level. I'm not comfortable yet, you know, this is really a sideways range in this bottom, but I think if we can start by taking out the March highs, just like Bitcoin, then we can talk about continuing higher. Just watch out for a problem and perhaps some consolidation troubles in this zone. Above 1572 though, if we find support from that level, just as we did here in 2022, then we should fly. So DOT, not quite out of the woods yet, and potentially a little bit of a bigger pullback at this level. It's going to turn into something bigger, so if we, this is something to watch out for, we might see a bigger pullback, like a wave one, you know, very often, because if this is 5 waves from the lows, we could see a bigger pullback to this swing low. If we go back to the daily, you'll see what I mean. This swing low that we made here at the end of November, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a break underneath the 236. Keep your watch of where the 236 fib is from this low, because that, a break underneath that would say that we're going to do that this swing is complete, and we're going to do that bigger correction. So at the moment, that 236 fib is at 9.7. As we move higher, you can keep moving it up, and that will kind of tell you that we're going to see perhaps that bigger correction. And if we did that here, a 50% pullback would be back to the end of November low and 7.65 in DOT. Let's take a look at Uni now. Uni, this might be one of my more favorite, really super bullish charts. Monthly, let's take a look. Now, why am I really bullish this one? Well, this looks like 5 waves up and big 3 waves back to a big 886, I think, pullback level. Spent a long time building a base. This is very clearly 3 waves down, which is corrective, which means when I'm looking for targets in Uniswap, I'm going to measure from this first swing and project it from here. And I really like how we validated this 236 fib level in the middle here. So kind of the worst case scenario would be, if we measured from this low to this high, would be an equal measured move, I suppose, and we're getting pretty close to that, but they kind of don't line up with the fib levels. If we went to the 1.618 though, and this would be this 50% here, I would expect a shallow pullback and this keep going, because if this swing is 1.618 of the first swing, that for me would be quite a bullish scenario. So we've got a bit of a wobble level here maybe, and by that I mean a little bit of a level. We could see a little bit of a pullback with some consolidation at 18.42. But yeah, like this chart, I think above the weekly 200 moving average, trading new highs, you know, that we haven't seen since, gosh, 2022. It's not finished yet, let's put it that way. 18.42, if we reverse there, I would be very disappointed. I think we have more upside in 26.9 next. I'm watching this one. I have a little, not nearly enough, but there you go. Uniswap is potentially, you know, this is one of those charts where I think that we could very easily see new highs because of this 3-wave correction in this one. And so you know, at this point, if you haven't gotten any or don't think you have enough, a bit of a pullback this month in this zone here actually would be a little bit of a gift. It would be all over. The party's over on a close below 13. That would just mean 3 waves and we're done. Okay. So that's how I'm seeing Uniswap. We got a request for sand. Let's see where I've hidden that chart. Got a few of them on the go. Here we go. Sand. Sand is at that kind of key level. If we look left in this chart, there is a bit of support and resistance around this round number 1. Okay. And that happens a lot. Those round numbers work. I've put my fib retrace levels. So if we go all the way from when this launched to the high we made, this is a back test of this 886 fib level. And we have to say that, you know, we've gone from being in a downtrend to in a sideways range, and we're kind of testing the highs of this sideways range at the moment. Now, we had a look above it and a new high here, and it looks like we're closing back underneath. Like if I line it up exactly with these previous swing highs here, you know, we had these it could just be a pause level. We tested the high here in the middle of this bottoming pattern. We've broken above it. It would be pretty not so bullish if we close back underneath this level, but I'm going to stick with this kind of zone and this back test of this fib level and say potentially round number 1 we have reached you know, the top of the sideways range that we're in, and we could see a little bit of a bigger pullback here. If we take a look at where we are so far, there's no kind of reversal price action. We could just keep going. In fact, we've got a little tiny inside bar on the daily and just sideways. And so I think blasting above this round number 1 and holding above it, we continue higher from here, and 1.8 for me would be the next fib level on the upside. I think not in a straight line. These previous swing highs and lows potentially could give us some trouble. I think, you know, if you look at simple trend ideas, we are holding above these highs in the middle. Kind of keeps us really bullish to keep going. So I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of kept sideways here and then continued higher. At this point, watch this. Don't let it come back too far. By that, I mean, if you're long this one, if you put fib retrace levels from the lows in August, which is the lowest low here, I think, then this 236 fib retrace level is what at the moment we're holding as support. We will see a bigger pullback and this 5 waves will be complete and we'll come back to the middle here and this 50% here on the daily with this daily 20 if we close underneath that. So if we're going to keep trending higher, we need to keep holding above 0.8589 or we risk a bigger pullback to 0.63. Okay, so I don't know which way it's going to go. Here we are, just like a lot of these charts, we're in a little sideways range, holding above 1.0, yes, lots more upside, holding back underneath 0.85, expect a bigger pullback to 0.63 in sand. Let's take a look at FDM. I can't remember where I hid everything. Here we go, FDM. I apologise, I'm late with all these charts. Everything's just been one of those. Yeah, there we go. Let's take a look at big fib retrace levels. Now, if I put this on the monthly, I suppose we could argue that we got a good reaction at this 236 fib. But, you know, that's a bit woolly for me. I don't like that. So I'm going to see, did we back test and this, do these levels work the other way? And when I'm not clear where the low is, I quite often, because all of these coins start at 0, don't they? I get a 0. And start at 0. And then do these fib levels work on a back test? And I have to say they kind of don't. So this is one of those charts where they're probably not working. Now, we could say that this was a really good support level. And we double bottomed, we broken above it. Normally if you do that, your first target would be twice this distance, which kind of, in this case, was where we got to on this first swing. So all good on that pattern. And now we've retested the lows, higher low, and so I'm going to measure my swings from this low and this retest, if you like, and we'll go from there. And then I want to go down to a lower time frame and say, did we get any reaction at the 61.8 level? Because if we didn't, you know, I kind of don't like relying on them either. I just want to see if the market's looking at them. And I have to say not enough. But we did get an interesting reaction here, and we're a little bit sideways at this 1.618 level. So I'm going to go with that and stick with it. See if we can hold above 1.31, maybe 1.9 next. Clearly, holding above these previous highs as well, which looks like we're doing, keeps this really bullish. And a trend change on just simple definitions, you know, when you're in a downtrend, when you're making lower lows and lower highs, and this one's making higher lows. So I'm going to keep it really simple. Even when they don't make fibs, very often in a chart, if you don't react to the fibs, the 50% kind of is a really good place to look for first, because even on simple charts where that doesn't work, mean reversion works. Somewhere between 1.8 and 1.9 I think would be a good target for this one if we keep going. And this fib level here in the middle and this equal measured move level would be where I'd like to see some sideways maybe action, just like we did here, and maybe a wave 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But Phantom, nothing I'm using is working for targets. We've got no moving averages above us. The one thing I would say is it's bullish, you know, keep going. Now, when you're not sure, what you want to kind of do is look at lower time frames, especially the daily. And if we start taking out a previous swing low, you know that you're in a bigger correction. And then it's kind of a good time to get out and wait for a bigger pullback, because you can see in this, you know, all of them, if you look like down to a 4 hour and hourly, these will be 3 wave corrections usually. Even this one, little one here. If we go down to an hourly, look at this. 1, 2, 3, you know, 1, 2, 3. That's a really good sign, especially if the waves are kind of choppy and overlapping. So, and then pull back to moving averages and carry on. So Phantom looking pretty good, but I think we may be in a little bit of a chop zone, and ideal target would be somewhere between 1.8 and 1.9 next for Phantom. Okay, let's take a look at Sui, which has been incredible, and see where we go next for Sui. Now, I had targets before based on kind of fib projections from the big 3 wave correction that we made in April to June in this one, and I have to say they weren't perfect. One thing about when you put these 1.618 and 2.618 levels on is if you blast through them to the next one, you look for them to be support, and that's worked very well. So I'm going to keep leaning on these levels and projections. And 2 is around number fib level here. So here, when this is a wobble level, 4.3, I think we may have a little bit of a pause here, but my next upside target is 4.9 in this one, and maybe 5.86. So yes, this is one of those levels where we may have a little bit of a pause, but Sui for me, as long as we don't break back underneath 3.9, should continue higher to 4.9 next. So that means on this 4 hour, it's got, here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We would look for 3 waves correction, either sideways or so something like this, and carry on. But sometimes they can get a little bit, you know, we could come back to that 3.9 level, and then yes, I think we have another swing. So we are at a pause level in Sui, but still looking for 4.9 next in this one. BNB, let's talk about that one, because this had a lovely blast out of the range that we were in, and that capped it. Now, what's the story for why? Where have I put BNB? I can't remember. Oh, it doesn't matter. Let's draw the chart again. Okay, in BNB, these are the highs that we made in 2021, and then we retested them and had a pretty nasty pullback from them. And this is quite often what happens when you come back to these big levels, especially if you can count kind of 5 waves into them, you may see a bigger pullback. But this was a lovely 3-wave correction, and here we go again. And if we really actually look big picture from the lows in 2022, I think this is a 1, 2, 3, and we're in a wave 5, which would normally mean, remember, quite often in crypto the wave 5s extend by far the longest and strongest. If we really do get a very pro-crypto government next in the United States, I think that would be really good for BNB to be let back in. So we could see this exchange benefit really well. Okay, so I've drawn fib from this low to high. These all worked really well. So first target on the upside for me is 830 and then 1005. Now, it's very fashionable to look at previous highs as support. Very often they are support if you're in a strong trend. But for me, I would only say I'm wrong on this breakout if we went and closed back underneath this 886 fib level, which is at 633. I don't think this is a false breakout, but in fifth waves, it can get very choppy. You can, overlapping sometimes. So this is not a sell unless, in terms of trend, unless we hold underneath 633. Short term, these pullbacks are looking, really nice and corrective, but it's a little bit like Solana, or some of the others where it looks like one swing lower, and I wouldn't be surprised. So here's our first swing lower. I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a three-wave move and we make another one before we continue higher. So 8633 really, as long as if we get a nasty shakeout in a lot of markets, this would be a pretty cool place to buy. That's why I'd be looking for anyway. Okay, I'll be back with more. I've got a meme coin update to follow.